Hey, Pretty Girl Club. Welcome back to the Privilege Stacking series. I just want to say welcome to all of the new subscribers. Welcome to the Pretty Girl Club. But I want to talk about light skin privilege. I want to talk about what it means to benefit from an ism because I've noticed that ever since the rise in popularity of the exotical space, suddenly people on Black YouTube want to act like it's impossible to benefit from isms. They were telling us for decades to acknowledge our privilege. They were telling us to check our privilege, and they didn't think that those actual women who are actually privileged would come online and create YouTube videos and speak for ourselves. So, I want to dive into what privilege is. I want to talk about what light skin privilege is. How do you know if you have light skin privilege? And I want to talk about these privileges from the perspective of women who actually have these privileges, because who better to talk about said privileges than the women who have actually experienced them? So I want to start off by saying, obviously, all of these privileges are messed up. Okay, so if you come into my comments section saying, oh, well, you're trying to defend privileges, no, nobody is defending isms. I'm simply dealing with the reality that we live in. Okay, we don't live in a utopian society. So saying that the exotical community is defending isms or that we're like promoting isms while you are simultaneously benefiting from capitalism by creating a YouTube channel that is monetized, that's extremely disingenuous and it's very hypocritical. But let's go ahead and talk about these isms because this channel is created to help women of color to recognize their privileges, because I actually believe that everybody has some form of privilege. I just think that there are women who allow their inferiority complexes to cancel out their privileges. By the way, be sure to get my Dark Femininity course. It is a 4-week long course. There are journal prompts in there. You're definitely going to be able to overcome your inferiority complexes. And then once you get the course, be sure to email me so that I can give you access to the Discord. But we had a vote on this channel about what Fenty colors we're going to be considering light skinned. So please be sure to check out my What Color is Light Skin series because I have a whole entire series on this. Because have you ever noticed that whenever you ask someone in the Black community, hey, what's the darkest shade of light skinned? Not only can they not answer that question, but they don't want to answer that question because they understand that light skin privilege exists. And so by acknowledging what color light skinned is, they're acknowledging what colors have privilege when it comes to the colorism conversation. But in order to move forward as a community and in order to gain a stronger sense of identity and to stack whatever privileges you have, it's very important to actually be aware of what those privileges are. Okay, so we already know that our society is messed up. We already know that privileges shouldn't exist. But guess what? Privileges aren't going anywhere. So spending all of your time focusing on how bad all of these privileges are, it's not going to make people say, okay, pretty privilege is bad. I'm just going to be ugly now. Okay, light skin privilege is bad. I'm just going to go crawl into a corner now. No, that's not how life works. So I'm tired of people doing this performative virtue signaling where they're constantly making YouTube videos about how bad our society is, but they're never teaching Black women how to navigate through it. So this video is for women who happen to be of a lighter skin tone and maybe they're not aware of their privilege, maybe they've never checked their privilege, or maybe they don't know that they have this particular privilege. But we actually had a vote on this channel about what Fenty colors we are going to consider light-skinned, and you guys voted on Fenty shades 390 and above. So I will insert a picture of a woman who is Fenty shade 390. We consider this, on this channel, we consider that to be the darkest shade of light-skinned. We understand that skin tone is subjective. We also understand that you can be light-skinned and happen to not have light skin privilege. But guess what? The exceptions don't make the rule, okay? So everything that we're saying on this YouTube channel, this is all a speculation. Everything that we say on here is just us kind of brainstorming together and talking about all of our experiences. Okay, sorry, I just had to pause it for a second. Please keep in mind that I do have an international audience. If you have a different opinion on what light skinned is, that's fine. Feel free to make your own channel and your own community to talk about whatever shades you consider to be light skinned. I know that people will debate about what is and isn't light skin. That's why I had a vote, because the world does not revolve around just my opinions. And a lot of people who have a very narrow view of what light skinned is, these are usually people who have not been in a multicultural environment. These are usually people who are just basing their perspectives on their hometown. So that's why I'm glad that we have an exotical community, because thousands of us are able to come together and kind of share our experiences. And we noticed a pattern that once you hit Fenty 390 and above, that is when all of our experiences start to align. So I really do believe that the exotical identity and your skin tone identity are really based on experiences. So if you're Fenty 390 and above, you may notice that people, that's when they start throwing you in and out of quote unquote light skin. That's when you start getting the light skin treatment. But ever since the rise of the exotical sector, people want to pretend like there are no privileges that come with being light skinned. So they told us for decades to acknowledge our privilege, and when we finally do, suddenly we are colorists who are promoting the isms. But wouldn't you rather hear someone talk about a privilege who actually has that privilege? And something to remember too, Pretty Girl Club, is that privilege is not a competition. I don't believe in hierarchy thinking. The exotical space does not promote any form of hierarchy. So we don't believe that like light skin is better than dark skin or curly hair is better than straight hair. And like, we don't see it that way. But one privilege of being light skinned is that you do not have as much colorism trauma as a lot of other people. Light skinned people can still face colorism from people lighter or whiter than them, but they do not face as much colorism as a dark skinned, unambiguous, monoracial black person. So, not having to go through trauma related to your skin tone, that is a privilege. Avoiding trauma is a privilege. Another privilege from being light skinned is that it's easier to find your foundation shade everywhere. So if you hire a random makeup artist, the makeup artist is going to be more familiar with how to do makeup for your skin tone because there are simply more people with your skin tone. So they most likely have experience with it. So another privilege is when it comes to photography and lighting, they have dealt with more people of your complexion. You are the standard and the representative for blackness, especially to people who are non black. People who have this kind of golden or light brown or kind of tannish, beigey, sandy skin tone, those people within that skin tone range are so heavily represented in black media to the point where they have literally replaced unambiguous dark skinned black people. And so whenever you think of a pretty black woman in your mind, a lot of non black people, they will think of somebody like Beyonce or Rihanna or Lori Harvey or Kat Graham. So looking like a woman of that skin complexion, they're more likely to be praised for their beauty because the beauty of Beyonce and all these other women in the media, their pretty privilege actually does trickle down to you because you actually look like those women. You actually share their complexion. You actually share their phenotype. Skin tone is one of the main determining factors of your overall phenotype. So if you share a skin tone with a celebrity who is praised for her beauty, you share the phenotype of that woman. And so this is something that a lot of people of other skin tones won't tell you, but I mean, it's true. If you share the same phenotype as Beyonce, then Beyonce's pretty privilege will trickle down to you. If you share the same phenotype as Lori Harvey or Christina Milian, then their pretty privilege trickles down to you. That is absolutely a privilege that a lot of women of other phenotypes don't experience. And so you get privilege because your skin tone is so heavily represented in the media and it's represented as beautiful in the media. Your skin tone is perceived as like the love interest in a lot of movies, both in black media and in white media. Think about Beyonce. Let's just use her as an example. Let's use Beyonce and Rihanna as an example. Their phenotypes are highly praised as being beautiful by both the black community and the white community. Their skin tones are heavily praised. Think about Ice Spice. Ice Spice is another example of someone who is praised for her beauty. And if you share that phenotype, aka the skin tone, all you would have to do is if you want to wear the same hair color as those women or similar makeup or clothing, you are going to get a piece of that pretty privilege that Rihanna has. You're going to get a piece of that pretty privilege that Beyonce has. And I know that a lot of you guys have experienced this. Comment down below. Have you ever worn a blonde wig and then suddenly everybody's like, oh my God, you look like Beyonce, you look like Beyonce, you look like Beyonce? Have you ever worn, I don't know, it could be colored contacts or a black wig, and then people are like, oh, you look like Rihanna, or you look like Lori Harvey? Yeah, that's an example of pretty privilege trickling down to you. If someone looks like Lupita Nyong'o and they put on a blonde wig, people are not going to say, "Oh my God, you look exactly like Beyonce." No, some people may pander in the black community and they might pretend that she looks like Beyonce, but actual non black people from the international multiracial community, because remember, the world does not revolve around the black community. There are more people in this world than just black people. So, one of the privileges of having a light skin tone, Fenty 390 and above, is that when you put on these different hairstyles or when you do these different celebrity fashion looks, like Aaliyah, that's another one. If you do the side bang, the black hair with the side bang, and you put on like a Tommy Hilfiger tube top, you're going to get told that you look like Aaliyah, even by non black people, because non black people see the difference. They can tell. People have eyes. They know that if you have a Zendaya skin tone, that you look more like Aaliyah versus somebody who looks like Lupita Nyong'o. So that is an aspect of light skin privilege. It is that the beauty of light skinned women in the media will trickle down to you. Their pretty privilege trickles down to you. So I'm not saying that other skin tones don't have privilege. But this is my light skin privilege episode. So when we do the dark skin privilege episode and the hair texture privilege episodes, then we will focus on those. But in this episode, we're only talking about light skinned women. So another aspect of light skin privilege is that your skin tone has a closer proximity to people of other ethnicities. So a lot of people, they have a whiteness centered identity. This channel decenters whiteness. So that's why I say that if you're light skinned, your skin tone actually looks like a lot of people from the Philippines or Hispanic people. You may find yourself sharing a similar skin tone with them. You share a similar skin tone with Hispanic people, Pacific Islanders, Indian people. In fact, people from those groups will mention it to you. They will be like, "Oh, you have a beautiful complexion." Do you know how many times I've been told by white people that I have a beautiful complexion? I told you guys that I literally got a modeling contract at a white modeling agency, and she literally told me before I signed the contract at 14 years old, she said, "I want to sign you to our agency because you have a beautiful complexion." She said, "You have the perfect undertones for your skin. You can wear any color of clothing. And so I want to sign you to this modeling agency because of your complexion." So a lot of people who are Fenty 390 and above receive compliments on their complexion from non-black people. I know that people, they focus on how black men compliment our skin tones. I don't think that I've really received that many compliments from unambiguous black men on my skin tone. I tend to receive the most compliments on my complexion from MLS men and non-black people in general. They tend to they'll compliment my freckles, they'll compliment my skin tone. So usually everyone will compliment your complexion except for unambiguous dark skinned black people, probably because they think it's colorist to compliment a light skinned person's complexion. But a part of light skin privilege, though, is that a lot of non black people compliment your complexion. Tell me I'm lying. I know as a light skinned person that non black people from other ethnic groups, they will make a comment about your complexion because they will view you as having a perfect tan. So like you may hear people in the Hispanic community saying, "Oh my God, your tan is so pretty." You might hear white people saying, "Oh, your tan is so pretty." So you basically have the skin complexion of a tanned Filipino or a tanned Hispanic person or a tanned person from another group, and people will tell you this. So that's an aspect of privilege because your skin tone is actually more relatable to people of other ethnicities because it's more commonly found within people of other ethnicities. So light skin privilege is that your phenotype is more common, and so therefore it makes it easier for you to blend in, whereas dark skin privilege would be that their skin tone is more rare, so it makes it easier for you to stand out. So both are privileges, but they're just different types of privileges. So another aspect of light skin privilege is that sometimes wigs and weaves, they will look natural and effortless on you because, for example, if you wear Peruvian hair and you already have the skin tone of some Peruvian people, you can blend right in. It doesn't look as fake as if a Nigerian person with broad features and 4C hair put on a Peruvian wig. And I'm not saying that unambiguous black women always look bad in wigs, but a part of light skin privilege, though, is that that skin tone in and of itself is ambiguous. Fenty 390 and above, those skin tones within themselves,
The Fenty 200s to 300s, those skin tones within themselves are ambiguous. So if you pair an ambiguous skin tone with an ambiguous hair texture, even if it's fake, it's going to blend more effortlessly and it doesn't look as forced as someone with extremely pale white skin or someone with extremely dark ebony skin. So, a part of light skin privilege for women is the stereotypes that come with it as well. So, being bougie, being feminine, being snobby, being stuck up, classy, uppity. Obviously, those can be negative things, but you can actually alchemize those things and make it work for you. Women do this all the time. Look at Beyonce's branding. She brands herself as a diva. She brands herself as being this hyper feminine queen. Look at Rihanna and all kinds of other women. They actually use that quote unquote light skinned feminine stereotype to their advantage. Am I saying this is a good thing? Absolutely not. But guess what? Society in and of itself is not good. So who gonna check us? Who gonna check these light skinned women who have made millions of dollars off of these feminine stereotypes? And actually, some women will play into their sexuality using their skin tone as a part of their sex appeal. We see this a lot with women like Cardi B. I'm thinking of Chris Brown. Even Chris Brown does this because in his music, he actually talks about being light skinned. And, so sometimes light skinned women or men, they will actually utilize the sexuality that is associated with their skin tone to kind of enhance their sex appeal, just like how dark skinned people do this as well, sexy chocolate, etc. So light skinned people can do that. That's a part of light skin privilege. Another aspect of light skin privilege is that if you are a light skinned black woman, if you're monoracial, you get to hold multiple identities at the same time. So you have the identity of being ambiguous because your skin tone in and of itself is ambiguous, and you also have the identity of blackness. So think about like Tamar Braxton, Toni Braxton. These women are monoracial because from what I understand, I think they only have a very small admixture, but they get to hold multiple titles. They hold the title of being a black woman, having the melanin poppin' and whatever, black girl magic, and they also get to hold the title of being ambiguous because the skin tone in and of itself is very common. That golden skin tone, a beigey skin tone, that yellow skin tone, the red bone skin tone, light brown, caramel, whatever you want to call it, cinnamon, those skin tones are still found within multiple other ethnic groups. That is undeniable. You cannot argue with me on that talking point because statistically, there are more people who have a light brown skin tone or a tan or beige skin tone versus a super, super pale white or a super, super ebony dark skin tone. You cannot argue with me about that. And so that is, in and of itself, a privilege because there is a universalism to your complexion that makes you relatable and more safe compared to other people. So another thing that a lot of light skinned people get called is safe brown. So I don't really like when people use that term though because it implies that dark brown is dangerous. And so you may find people kind of like resenting you because they understand that being considered safe or being considered more relatable to other ethnicities is in and of itself a privilege. The next aspect of light skin privilege is fluid identity. Anybody who benefits from any of the isms has a fluid identity, whether they like it or not. Okay, so if you benefit from colorism, texturism, or featureism, you have a fluid identity, whether you like it or not. So you will be thrown in and out of unambiguous blackness, but this can be used to your advantage. And when I say that you have a fluid identity, what I mean is that in non black spaces, some non black people will not see you as being an unambiguous mono dark skinned black person. They won't. Because I've literally had white men, I personally have had white men talk about how they don't like dark skinned black women, and I know it's messed up. Yes, I understand that they are colorist, but unfortunately, to colorist people, they will view you differently than how they view a darker skinned or more unambiguous looking person. Another aspect of light skin privilege is less jail time. So when it comes to that statistic, I do think that there are some holes in some of those articles that they wrote about lighter skinned people receiving less jail time or like not having as much of an issue with the police. But I mean, that is something that a lot of people say. They say that you receive less jail time for similar crimes. I would hope that you're not intending on committing any crimes, but I had to add that in there. Okay, so another aspect is I talked about this a little bit. It is the lust or kind of like sexual privilege. So there is a lust that people have for kind of like this butter pecan skin tone. There are people who want to tan to your skin tone, and there are people who want to brighten to your skin tone. So you can use that fetishization to your advantage. A lot of people do this. A lot of models do this. They get cast in music videos or they will become Instagram famous due to people fetishizing their skin tone. And so there really are some women who will play into the sexuality that is associated with their skin tone. And so you will be placed on a pedestal or you will have desirability in the black community. But also you'll have desirability in non-black communities because you are exotic and different enough because of your blackness, but you're still similar enough and safe enough in your phenotype to make people of other races feel comfortable. So there, unfortunately, there are some people who don't feel comfortable being around people who are too far away from their phenotypes. So you have that perfect place in the middle, according to them. So that is a privilege in some spaces. For some people, they feel like you have that perfect, like your skin tone sits right in the middle of the universal spectrum of skin tones. That is quote unquote light skin privilege. Also, if you check out my bleaching interview series where I interviewed women who went from dark skin to light skin, they actually talked about how people from other ethnicities felt more friendly with them and felt more comfortable with them due to their closer proximity to those ethnicities. But another thing to remember though is that privilege cannot be quantified. There is no benchmark or standard. So if you say, oh, you only had light skin privilege one time, okay, you still have light skin privilege. Either you have the privilege or you don't. It's not about how many times you have the privilege. Oh, I'm only light skinned in the winter. Who cares? You still have light skin privilege. It can't be quantified. Privilege is not a competition. So even if you are lighter in the winter and then you're dark skinned in the summer, that doesn't matter. You still have access to the privilege. So privilege is something that you either have or you don't. Doesn't matter how many times you have it, doesn't matter how many spaces you have it in, you still have access to that privilege. There are people in this world who don't have access to that privilege at all, ever. So we're not going to sit here and argue, oh, well, I passed the paper bag test, but you don't pass the paper bag test. No, it doesn't matter. If you have ever received light skin privilege in your life, then you have light skin privilege. I said what I said. So there is no hard and fast rule like, oh, you have to be called light skinned at least 5 times to be considered light skinned. No. But another aspect of light skin privilege is that you are heavily represented in both white and black media. You have had plenty of beauty icons to look up to and take style tips from and take makeup tips from. Think about all the different shades and all the different diverse light skinned women that you have seen in the media. You've got the darker, caramely light skins, you've got the super light, white passing light skinned people, you've got kind of tanned light skins, beige light skins, sandy colored light skins, golden light skins, caramel light skin. So you have had plenty of women to kind of live vicariously through if you wanted to when you were a child. You have had plenty of beauty icons to take style tips from or to take makeup tips from. Think about when you were a teenager. Have you ever tried to look like maybe Beyonce or Rihanna or Aaliyah or Megan Good or Mariah Carey or Meghan Markle? Whoever you have tried to look like, you've always had someone to look up to in terms of media representation and in terms of music industry representation. You have had a plethora of icons. Okay, so that is absolutely a privilege. Media representation is a privilege. Having someone to give you makeup tips and styling tips on TV and in mass media and on social media, such as the natural hair movement and stuff like that, that is absolutely a privilege. You have had an abundance of role models. That's a part of light skin privilege. The next one is that a lot of men of non-black ancestry who have celebrity crushes on black women, usually they have a celebrity crush on some sort of light-skinned woman. I mean, let's be completely honest. Anytime I have been around a white guy who has tried to somehow like have a crush on me or something, he will tell me, "Oh, you look like Aaliyah. You look like Beyonce. You look like Christina Milian. You look like whatever his little quote unquote celebrity crush is." Like I said, that pretty privilege It doesn't trickle down to unambiguous dark skinned black women, but it does trickle down to you. That's who it trickles down to. That's why they're mad. And that's why they say, oh, it doesn't trickle down to black women. Well, yeah, it's because it trickles down to the light skinned women. That's why. Every time another woman of your phenotype gets praise in the media, that increases your pretty privilege. And especially if that woman passes away, now your pretty privilege has increased even more. Notice how when Aaliyah was alive, I remember when Aaliyah was alive, people used to say she couldn't sing. They said that she was not that great. They said she was mediocre. But as soon as Aaliyah passed away, suddenly she's this beauty icon. She had this amazing style. So I hate to be morbid, but especially if an MLS woman or a light skinned woman passes away, she is hailed as the most beautiful woman, partially because she's no longer a threat. But we can talk about that in another video. But her beauty is put on a pedestal even higher. And so that makes your beauty pedestal even higher because you look like a timeless woman who is, people don't talk bad about the dead. So if you look like a beauty icon who has died, Aaliyah, then your beauty pedestal is incredibly high. So if you look like B. Simone or like Aaliyah or like, you know what I mean? Like B. Simone, she looks like Aaliyah to me. So B. Simone's beauty pedestal would be very high because she looks like a deceased beauty icon who nobody's going to talk. People aren't going to talk bad about Aaliyah's beauty. They're not going to say, oh, Aaliyah's mediocre. No, because it goes against social norms to speak ill of the dead. And it especially goes against social norms to speak ill of the beauty of someone who has passed away. So if you look like a beauty icon who has passed away, let's say you look like Lena Horne or somebody like that. Well, I don't know if Lena Horne is alive. I'm sorry if she's still alive. But I'm just trying to think of people who have passed away. But if you look like someone like that, your beauty pedestal will be super high. But that's an aspect of light skin privilege. Like a lot of non black men who have celebrity crushes tend to have a celebrity crush on the black beauty icons. And the majority of the black beauty icons and most famous women who are black are light skinned women, or they're some sort of mixed race, kind of, they have an ambiguous skin tone basically. Usually they are Fenty 390 and above. So whether it's Stacey Dash, whether it's Rihanna, whether it's Beyonce, whether it's Megan Good, all of these women that I'm naming off the top of my head are generally within Fenty 390 and above. So not saying that there are not other beauty icons, but like I said, this is the light skin privilege episode. I'll talk about dark skin privilege in the next episode in this series, but another thing that you learn as a light skinned woman is you are the object of envy. Okay, so a lot of people envy you if you are Fenty 390 and above. Let's just be honest. Light skinned women, we can attest to this. We already know. You're going to be the object of envy. So you actually learn resilience at a young age, and you're better at spotting envious people because you've dealt with it since childhood. You're better at spotting envious people. You become very immune. I've noticed a lot of pretty women or quote unquote light skinned women, if you're the object of envy and you have any sort of strong willed mindset, you actually become very resilient and you become very immune to criticism because you've been the object of envy since childhood. And so that's actually a privilege. Learning how to handle criticism, learning how to let it roll off your shoulder. I mean, look at what they're doing to me right now. They think that I'm a light skinned, black skin IG baddie. And so look at how bad they're trying to criticize me right now because of who they think I am. But I already know how to handle criticism. I already know how to let things roll off of my back because I'm used to people being envious of my beauty or my complexion or people will try to gaslight you as well. As a light skinned woman, you're used to a lot of gaslighting because people will try to tell you you're not light skinned. And this is a part of why we had a vote on this channel because we know as light skinned people that a lot of people gaslight our skin tone. So one moment you're light skinned, the next moment you're unambiguous brown skinned or dark skinned, especially if you're not white passing. So you become very resilient. That is absolutely a privilege. The next thing is you don't have to deal with as many negative stereotypes of black women because unfortunately, racist non-black people, when they think of an example of a black woman, they're not thinking of your phenotype. Only the black community views light-skinned black women as the representative for blackness. When you think in your mind of what a black woman is, you don't tend to think of Aaliyah. Usually you're thinking of like Viola Davis. So, as a light skinned woman, you actually don't deal with as many attachments to negative black stereotypes. Have you ever noticed that a lot of people they'll say, "Oh, Ice Spice and Cardi B and all these women, they're meeting the negative stereotypes of black women, but they don't deal with the scrutiny." Yeah, that's because you won't admit that the international community as a whole does not view them the same way that they view unambiguous black women. So that's a part of light skin privilege. They're right. You know, black women are actually correct when they say that a part of light skin privilege is you do not have to deal with as much scrutiny about your blackness because people don't associate your skin tone with blackness because your skin tone is ambiguous. Yes, that includes light brown, Cardi B, those types of skin tones, or non-white passing skin tones, like a Tia and Tamara phenotype, or I don't know, like sandy skin tones, beigey skin tones, golden, butter pecan, caramely skin tones. Yeah, so that's a part of light skin privilege. You don't have to deal with as many negative stereotypes of blackness because people don't even associate your complexion itself with blackness. Your skin tone is the largest organ on your body. Okay, it's your biggest organ. So your skin tone is a pivotal part of your phenotype. So if your skin tone is the same as Indian women, or it's the same as a lot of Hispanic women, or if it's the same as a lot of tanned Pacific Islanders, people don't associate all of those people groups with black stereotypes. So that's why light skinned women don't deal with as much scrutiny. That's why they can twerk on stage or act ratchet or whatever, and people don't view it as the same as like if a dark skinned black woman has the same behaviors. So I'm not saying that is right, but I am saying that that's a part of light skin privilege. It's the fact that you avoid a lot. I would say you avoid about 95% of the negative stereotypes that come with blackness, like being perceived as masculine or being perceived as like ghetto and ratchet. Light skinned women don't have to deal with that. I'm just being honest. As a light skinned woman myself, I've never had any insecurities about people viewing me as ratchet or masculine. I've never even thought about that my whole life. So I'm not scared of like, well, I don't wear long acrylic nails and stuff like that, but you know how you see a lot of rappers and they'll wear these ratchet outfits, they'll do all this twerking, they will act like a degenerate, and they don't get the stereotypes of a degenerate from the international community. People just kind of overlook it. Yeah, it's because of their skin tone. So unambiguous black women are correct when they talk about that being a part of light skin privilege. It is. So if you're light skinned, that's a part of your privileges. You don't have to deal with as many negative stereotypes because your skin tone, it's really not just the blackness that has the negative stereotype. It's dark skin itself that is attached to that negative stereotype. So if you do not have dark skin, like if you're Fenty 390 and above, you bypass that skin tone trauma. Okay, so I'm not trying to make it like one skin tone is better than the other, but like I said, this is my light skin privilege episode. In the dark skin privilege episode, we will talk about the privileges of being dark skinned. But in this one, we're focusing on light skin. So the next one is that the international community as a whole does not view light skinned people the same way they view dark skinned black people. The only people that refuse to acknowledge this are unambiguous black people themselves. Anyone with eyes can see the difference between a light skinned black person and a dark skinned black person. This is why the pretty privilege of light skinned black women never trickles down to unambiguous dark skinned black women. It's because any non black person who thinks of blackness, they're not going to think of a yellow or a light brown skin tone. They're going to think of a chocolate skin tone because chocolate skin is the real standard for blackness. So, whether you're monoracial or multiracial, your ambiguous complexion makes people not associate you with blackness. There's ambiguity in your skin tone itself. Okay, so you're not going to deal with the negative stereotypes of blackness as heavily. The most stereotyping you'll deal with as a light-skinned woman will only be within the black community. It'll only be the stereotypes associated with being light-skinned. Okay, but outside of the black community, people will acknowledge your skin tone difference subconsciously because your skin tone literally looks like some of their family members. Your skin tone literally looks like how they look when they get a tan, especially if they're another person of color, like a Hispanic person, a Pacific Islander person, Filipino, Indian, whatever. So like for example, when a dark-skinned woman leaves the black community, she is still seen as a dark-skinned woman dark skin tones do not have the same fluid skin tone identity, but dark skin does have other privileges. But your skin tone, in and of itself, as a light skinned woman, is seen as a status symbol by unambiguous women a lot of times. Dark skinned, unambiguous black women have historically had the tendency to prop up light skinned female celebrities, and they do this by talking about them, by listening to their music, by living vicariously through your phenotype, by doxing people or claiming to dox people. I mean, do you see how hard they tried to approximate who they believe to be me? They tried to approximate themselves to me, saying, "Oh, she looks just like me," when you know damn well you don't have a Fenty 390 or above skin complexion. Okay, so another aspect of light skin privilege is, I think I talked about this a little bit, like when it comes to lighting, when you're taking photos, you don't have to worry about shadows. Like if there's a shadow on your face, you just look dark red. Like if there's a shadow on your skin, you just look like a brick red skin tone or something. You don't have to worry about the shadows completely washing out your features because you're light skinned. Okay, so if you're in bad lighting as a light skinned person, or if you're in a dark room as a light skinned person, you just look dark red or you look burgundy or something like that. Whereas a lot of people with very deep skin tones, they really will blend in with the shadows. And I'm not saying it to be rude, I'm just saying, physically. Um, so another thing that I kind of talked about is that ambiguity and beauty enhancements are believable. So hair colors are believable, eye colors are believable, even if it's fake. I'm talking about things like weaves and wigs with highlights in them. I'm talking about like if you wear, I don't know, colored contacts or something, or different lip colors, different makeup shades. It's more believable because your skin tone is universally ambiguous. I said what I said, okay? That's light skin privilege. It's ambiguity. You get a black experience, but you also get mistaken as mixed or even non black in some cases. That is ambiguity. Ambiguity means that you have contradictory experiences. It means that you have multifaceted experiences. So you have avoided the traumas of women with extremely pale skin tones or extremely dark skin tones. Okay, so that's just a little bit of what exactly light skin privilege is. So, if any of those privileges sound like they can be utilized for you to make money or provide for your family or help you to social climb, that's just kind of the tip of the iceberg when it comes to light skin privilege. What do you ladies think? Have you ever used light skin privilege to get opportunities? Has light skin privilege ever saved you from scrutiny? Let me know what you think in the comment section, and I'll talk to you next time. Stay pretty, ladies.